There I stood on that dusty road, watching a woman in a sharp designer suit point at my John Deere tractor, strapped to a flatbed truck, while she ranted about property values. That's when I told her, "That tractor you're towing isn't just mine, ma'am. It belongs to the United States military." The look on her face? Pure gold. How fast can an HOA president's power trip turn into a federal mess? I was about to find out. At 68, after 30 years in the Army Corps of Engineers, I'd finally grabbed my slice of the American dream. 40 acres of rich land on the edge of quiet Meadowview, Virginia. These rolling fields had been in my family for generations before developers started snapping up nearby plots for their so-called luxury planned communities. My wife of 42 years, Ellen, and I were thorough when we bought the place. Our land bordered the freshly minted Pine Hollow Estates HOA community, but wasn't part of it. I've still got the papers where our realtor, Tom Bradley, made it crystal clear that our farming rights were locked in under grandfathered county zoning laws from 1952. "This is agricultural land, George," Tom had said. "They can build their fancy subdivisions all they want, but your right to farm here is backed by Virginia law." That's all I cared about, tending my crops, raising my cattle, and spending my retirement working the land. My workshop, a converted barn, sits about 300 yards from our simple two-bedroom farmhouse. Ellen has her knitting group on Tuesdays. I've got my veterans coffee meetup on Thursdays, and Sundays are for family dinners with our son's crew, who live just 20 minutes away in Fairmont. The star of my setup was my John Deere 5075E utility tractor, a military-grade beast I'd earned through the Department of Defense's Veteran Equipment Preservation Program. Started in 2012, this little-known gem loans specialized farming gear to qualifying vets who maintain it for both practical use and education. Every few months, I'd host local school kids, teaching them about farming, engineering, and military history. The paperwork was a slog, but it spelled out one key fact. While I was the caretaker responsible for its upkeep, the tractor stayed U.S. government property. Each quarterly check-in from the DoD rep hammered that home. "You're doing great work, George," Major Carter told me last visit. "Showing these kids their roots, farming and military, it's something special." For 8 months, life was golden. Then Laura Mitchell moved into the biggest house in Pine Hollow Estates and decided she'd run the show. Laura, 55, was a retired biotech exec who'd cashed out big after a corporate merger, or so the neighborhood chatter went. She'd landed a fat payout and was hell-bent on turning our rural patch into something out of her old Massachusetts suburb. Her HOA president campaign featured slick signs promising raising property values through elite aesthetic standards, a phrase that had my neighbor, Ed Larson, grumbling. Translation: price out the folks who've been here forever. 2 weeks after squeaking into office with 32 votes, Laura's first move was a memo to all Pine Hollow residents and nearby landowners. The 4-page manifesto, stamped with the HOA's shiny new silver oak logo, laid out her grand plan: unattractive equipment, unauthorized livestock, makeshift buildings, and rural eyesores harming Pine Hollow property values will no longer be tolerated under the Enhanced Community Standards Initiative. Even though my land wasn't under HOA control, the last paragraph claimed their rules stretched to visual corridors impacting community aesthetics from their roads and shared spaces. When that memo landed, Ellen just sighed. Here we go, another city type wanting country charm without country life. I'm a straight shooter, so I invited Laura for coffee the next Saturday. She rolled up in a sleek black Audi, decked out in a gray suit that screamed out of place on our dirt road. Over coffee, I laid out my zoning docs, property lines, and the tractor's military status, stuff she'd called unsightly in her memo. I even asked her to swing by the next quarterly event, where third graders would learn about farm gear and military support rigs. My first win came at that event. A handful of Pine Hollow folks brought their grandkids and raved about my farm's community value. Dr. Alan Brooks, a retired biology professor new to Pine Hollow, was all in. "This is why we moved here," he told the crowd. "Real rural roots mixed with modern living. My grandkids get more out of an hour here than a month of video games." Laura lingered on the edges, her smile tightening as kids clambered over the pristine John Deere under my watch. When everyone cleared out, she cornered me. "The kids' program is cute," she said, barely hiding her disdain. But that green monstrosity is still visible from our entrance. It's got to go. I tipped my baseball cap. Rules are rules, Ms. Mitchell, but they're not yours to enforce on my land. She scanned my farm, eyeing my faded jeans and flannel. We'll see. Laura's crusade kicked into gear with surgical precision. First came weekly certified letters demanding I ditch what she called derelict machinery and non-compliant equipment. Each one got fancier, with the third sporting a letterhead from Carter Voss Sons, attorneys at law. Turns out, it was her cousin's firm in Richmond. I fired back with my zoning papers and surveys. She switched to noise complaints, claiming my 7 a.m. tractor runs broke, residential quiet hours. My second win dropped out of nowhere when County Zoning Inspector Luis Rivera showed up after Laura filed a grievance. Instead of slapping me with fines, he spent 2 hours touring my setup. George, this is the kind of agricultural legacy our county wants to protect, he said, snapping pics of the John Deere. Mind if I pitch this for the Historical Society newsletter? It's a textbook case of blending rural roots with modern growth. He left me his card, personal number scribbled on it. Call if anyone misreads your zoning rights. Pissed off by that loss, Laura upped the ante with daily stakeouts. Every morning at 8:15 sharp, her Audi parked on the dirt road to my place, and she'd snap photos of my work, scribbling violations in a fancy notebook. Things hit a tipping point when my security cam, set up after Ellen noticed our mailbox got messed with, caught Laura sneaking onto my land for close-ups of the tractor. The footage showed her in her suit, slipping under my fence. When Sheriff's Deputy Mike Reynolds came out for my trespassing report, he watched the video and paid Laura a visit. That third win felt sweet when he told me at our Veterans Coffee she'd gotten an official warning. Next step was charges. She claimed it was the easement, Mike laughed. Had to school her on utility easements versus private land. Some folks bring city attitudes to the sticks. Thinking we'd set some boundaries, Ellen and I took our daughter up on an offer to spend 4 days helping with our new grandkid in Fairmont. Before we left, I parked the John Deere along my dirt road after fieldwork, fully on my land. But yeah, visible from Pine Hollow's approach. We got back Thursday afternoon, loaded with baby pics and handmade goodies. Turning onto our road, I knew something was off. The spot where my tractor sat was empty. Someone stole it, I said, already dialing Sheriff Reynolds. As I talked to dispatch, Ellen shouted from the porch, "George, there's an envelope on the door." Inside was a notice on Pine Hollow letterhead, Notice of Nuisance Abatement Action. Pursuant to Community Protection Ordinance 15C, equipment violating aesthetic standards has been removed. Contact Riverside Impound for retrieval. Signed in bold ink, Laura Mitchell, HOA President. Fuming, I called the impound. The guy confirmed they'd towed a green John Deere from my road that morning. Got papers signed by the property manager, he said. Lady in a gray suit said it was unauthorized gear on community property. That's $1,200 towing, plus $150 a day storage. 1 day so far. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Laura, I thought I'd let you know personally, she purred, smug as hell. The HOA removed that nuisance equipment. The entrance looks so much better. If you want that eyesore back, pay the fees and sign a deal to keep farm junk off the access road. Oh, and our lawyer will bill you for removing your fence post, improperly placed near our access point. I started. That tractor isn't just my property, she cut me off. It's an eyesore, George, and it's gone. Have a nice day. Click. What Laura didn't get, what she couldn't have known, was that the John Deere had clear government tags warning against tampering. The driver's side placard read, Property of U.S. Government. Unauthorized use prohibited. PReg 41872, R3. This wasn't just theft, it was seizing federal property, a whole different ballgame. Hands still shaking, I called Major Carter at the DoD program. He picked up fast. George, everything okay with the John Deere? I laid it out. Impound details, Laura's trespassing footage, the works. Stay there, he said after a pause. Document everything, photos of where it was taken. Don't call this HOA lady again. I'm on it. By 8 a.m. Next morning, a government SUV rolled in, trailed by 2 military police cars and a civilian sedan. Major Carter introduced me to Captain Emily Hayes from the Judge Advocate General's Corps, 2 MPs, and Paul Grayson from the Department of Transportation's Federal Highway Admin. For an hour, they grilled me, checked property markers, reviewed footage, copied every scrap of HOA correspondence. "This isn't just about your tractor, Mr. Davis," Captain Hayes said, stacking papers. "Unauthorized removal of marked government gear triggers federal statutes. It's part of a program, has federal tags, and was taken from protected agricultural land without clearance." Grayson nodded. "DOTs, and because they used a commercial tow on public roads without permits. Each piece is a separate federal violation." Major Carter stepped out for a call, returning with a grim look. "George, I've run this program 6 years, seen vandalism, theft attempts, even a parade fender bender. But someone towing a marked government vehicle over HOA rules? She doesn't know the mess she's in." As they wrapped up, Captain Hayes said, "We're intercepting the tow truck. DOD's halted impound processing and ordered it redirected here with your tractor." "Back here?" I asked, stunned at the speed. "Yep," Major Carter confirmed. "Grayson's handling it. He's also calling MS Mitchell to tell her federal authorities taken over. She'll probably show up soon." Win number 4 hit when they stopped the impound and hauled my tractor back. But the real show was still coming. Heading home to prep, I turned onto my road and froze. The flatbed was already there, John Deere on board, driver looking lost and chatting on his phone. Behind him, Major Carter's SUV, MP cars, and Grayson's sedan. The military crew was eyeballing my property line, talking to the driver. Then a black Audi screeched up, and Laura stormed out in her gray suit, designer bag swinging, clutching a leather folder. She charged toward the truck, heels wobbling on the dirt, and stopped short when she saw me step out of my pickup. I adjusted my cap, standing tall in my plaid shirt and jeans, as her eyes narrowed at the military presence. "What's going on?" she snapped. "I sent that equipment to impound, not back here." I stepped up, pointing straight at her. "That eyesore you towed belongs to the U.S. military, ma'am." Captain Hayes approached. "MS Mitchell, I'm Captain Emily Hayes, JAG Corps, U.S. Army. We intercepted this vehicle after a report of unauthorized removal of federal property." Laura's face flickered, confusion, then defiance. "That old tractor's a community blight, removed under HOA covenants." "Ma'am," Hayes said, cool and firm, "you committed multiple federal offenses: false authority, illegal removal of government property, interference with a federal program, and filing fake docs claiming it was abandoned." The driver, shifting awkwardly, chimed in. "She told me it was abandoned on community land, signed everything saying she could take it." Grayson handed Laura a photo of the tractor's government plate. Her face paled, but she rallied. "This is ridiculous. HOA covenants clearly." "Ma'am," Grayson cut in, pointing to the Eagle seal. "This falls under Title 41, U.S. Code. Federal property law trumps HOA rules everywhere in the country." An MP added, "We measured your property line today. It was 38 feet inside Mr. Davis's land." Major Carter played my cam footage of Laura directing the tow, telling the driver to tag it abandoned. Hayes handed her a cease and desist letter. "Stop interfering with Mr. Davis's property or this equipment. The DOD's investigating. You'll hear from us in 3 days." Laura's hands shook as she took it, her bravado gone. "This isn't over," she muttered, retreating. "Actually," Hayes called, "federally, it's just starting. Get a lawyer who knows federal property law." As she peeled out, the driver apologized. "Sir, I didn't know it was government gear. They're having me drop it here instead of impound." That fifth win, watching Laura's smugness collapse in my driveway, was pure satisfaction. Word spread fast. By night, my phone was blowing up with neighbors who'd seen the military rigs. Tim and Clara Evans, fined $500 for unapproved wildflowers, dropped off a peach cobbler. "About time someone stood up to her," Clara said. The Perry family, hassled over their kid's too-tall basketball hoop, brought wine and grilled me on the feds. Then came a surprise call from Judge Henry Tate, a retired federal judge new to Pine Hollow. "George, I've seen your farm and brought my grandkids to your event. This HOA's out of control. Mind if I call a community meeting to fix it?" Within 48 hours, an emergency HOA meeting was set at the clubhouse. Turnout was unreal. Over 90% of homeowners, plus 2 local reporters dubbing it Tractorgate. My sixth win came sitting in the back, hearing folks unload years of gripes about Laura's bullying and random rules. Judge Tate called it governance overreach near abuse. The treasurer, Bill Norton, dropped a bomb. Laura had used HOA cash to pay the impound without board okay, logged as community beautification with no proposal. Digging deeper, they found more shady spending, tree trimming on non-HOA land, cameras aimed at problem properties. Laura didn't show. Her resignation hit an hour before, citing health issues, quitting both the HOA and Pine Hollow. The room erupted in applause. Judge Tate's interim board suspended all fines, set up transparent rules, and launched an audit of Laura's spending. But the real kicker came after. Residents approached me, not to gripe, but to praise my programs. Linda Hayes, a retired principal, asked to expand them. "We moved here for the rural vibe," she said. "We don't want a cookie-cutter suburb." 3 folks, a former AG teacher, a gardener, and a historian, offered to start a community garden on HOA land. Judge Tate greenlit a study. Victory 7. The new board voted for balanced rules and a heritage committee, with me advising to protect both property values and rural roots. Major Carter called days later. "Tractors at a base for inspection, minor tow damage. We're fixing it, back next week." Jag says Laura settled big to dodge prosecution. "Cash goes to our program. Your mess got us more funding. No charges, since the tractor was fine and she paid up, but she'd signed a mea culpa. Her house listed fast, begging for a quick sale. Ellen heard from her realtor at the store she'd bought a downtown condo with a stricter HOA. She loves rules, the agent quipped, just not for her. Pine Hollow flipped in months. Judge Tate's board invited me to set same buffer zones and guidelines. My quarterly events went monthly, with residents pitching in, Dr. Brooks on AG history, gardeners teaching kids to plant. 6 months later, Pine Hollow won a regional planning award for agricultural heritage integration, with a clubhouse plaque featuring my John Deere and kids. It's backed by my barn now, gleaming green with bigger government stencils, property of U.S. government. Unauthorized removal, federal offense. Judge Tate laughed when he saw it. Best HOA repellent ever. Couldn't agree more.